You're listening to The Science of CX. My name is Steve Pappas. I'm known for my relentless pursuit of all things customer. Across my career, and also in my 6 startups, I've had to learn how to make decisions in business that customers really respond to. Let's spend some time together and help your business soar, grow, and accelerate. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Science of CX. As always, I'm Steve Pappas, your host. And as you know, we continually strive to provide you with more information around the entire customer experience. And the types of information we bring run the gambit across everything from the data to the journey mapping to the common sense and to the training and the coaching and all of the above. So we strive hard to look for and reach out to experts in the field to come on the show and talk to us a little bit about things that maybe we didn't think about and some new things that we can learn about. And hopefully at the end of every one of our episodes, you could take away a few nuggets of information that help you in your business. So today I've got a great guest. I have Dennis Gershowitz from DG Associates. And Dennis and I are going to get into talking about journey mapping. Welcome, Dennis, to the show today.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Dennis, let me tell the folks that are listening a little bit about you, just so they get a sense of your background. So Dennis Gershowitz is the principal of DG Associates that specializes in B2B challenges such as customer experience management, customer outcome and adoption, customer journey mapping, leadership growth and development, best practices, and growing revenue and profits by focusing on services strategies and transforming services operations. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation today. Dennis has held key executive positions for companies such as Coulter Electronics, Technicom Instruments, Medical Laboratory Automation, and Alpha Wasserman, as well as worked with a number of startup organizations too. As an accomplished senior executive, Dennis is recognized for successful leadership roles and has received awards in services leadership, including Service Professional of the Year from AFSMI, for which he had also been a board member for many years. Omega Management's prestigious North Face Scoreboard Award for Outstanding Customer Service Achievement and Customer Experience Delivery. ITSMA's 2004 Innovation in Services Strategy Award, AFSMI President's Team, a founding member of the Technology Services International Association, Partner Advisory Board, is a certified executive mentor, is a fellow and mentor of UNCW's Cameron School of Business, and is an accomplished speaker and writer himself. So with a resume like that and a biography with so many accolades, I know today's conversation is going to bring some value to all of our listeners. So please stay tuned and let's get right into it. So Dennis, when we talked last, we kind of got off the beaten path and we started talking about golf. And of course, I'm a hack at golf, but I count whether or not it was a good day based on the number of balls that I lose. So if I lose under 5 balls, then it was a good day. The problem is I have to keep buying more all the time. So, but you know, we got to talking about how golf is a little like customer experience. Let's talk about that a little bit, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. First of all, I should say that, you know, the club I play at, there was once a diver off our number 9 lake, and he had 4 burlap bags of balls, and I said, I think I own one of those burlap bags, so I don't want you to feel bad there, you know. But you know, it is. You know, you set out each time you go out to play golf. It's a new experience, and so what you're really trying to do is you're trying to first of all create a little bit of a cultural shift. You're going to try to clear your mind of everything, you know, and try to focus on, you know, what I'm doing there, and you're really going to try to examine, you know, what is my purpose here? What am I trying to set up this experience? And generally, if you're like myself, you don't achieve that success. You're looking for that success. And the best you can do is I've settled for walking away with what was my best hole of the day. And I try to remember that, but at the end, that's about the best way I can relate it in there. So it is like a changing and evolving experience, which is something we find with customers also. You think about it, we set up all these processes and procedures, and I've always tried to educate my organizations that, look, when it comes to the customer, we have to be flexible because we don't know what the customer is going to bring up next. We don't know how they're going to react to what we're saying. And so the best we can do is just be prepared to try and, number one, listen to them very carefully. I think we make a mistake. We have all these internal biases depending on if we've spoken to the customer before, if we've had a bad day, et cetera. And it's so hard. It's so challenging when you're running frontline organizations, whether it be the field organization or the call center or the tech support group, trying to get people in the right frame of mind to deal with each of these incidences as something that's fresh, unbiased, listen, and how can I help them? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get them down that path to achieving the outcome, which we use today, for what they're looking for. And it's all about outcomes. In fact, I laugh, I've been around here long enough to remember, I think I mentioned to you when we initially talked, it seems like customer experience, customer success is like the old Ken Blanchard books. Every year he came out with a new book and everybody's rallying around a new mantra. But at the end of the day, when you peeled the onion away, it was the same story, so.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I remember calling it customer centric, customer focused.
Right.
It's gone through many iterations, but the difference is, I think it didn't have a full methodology applied to it as it does today.
Right.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about something near and dear to your heart. I know that journey mapping can be kind of a daunting thing for a lot of people to undertake, maybe when they're not in the customer experience business, and they can be complex. But let's talk about why journey maps themselves lead to more successful outcomes.
Okay. Good, very good question. And it's because if we do it the right way, what we end up doing is what a lot of companies have failed to do, and companies are beginning to understand they need to do, is when we map out a solution or a process that we want to execute, put in place, and we want the customer to be a part of. Too often, we've looked at that process in the design stage inwardly and not taking into consideration what's happening with the customer. And when I'm talking about what's happening with the customer, I'm not just speaking about when I'm engaging with them. We have to understand where they are before they even begin to come into contact with us and where they are after we leave them. And that whole cycle is what we're trying to map out. And when we map it out, we want to map it out from the viewpoint of how can I help the customer achieve their outcome, achieve their success. And to do that, I use a lot of tools. One is, I have to go through the process that currently exists and say, okay, for example, what do we know about what's not working? What are the barriers to success in these areas? What is it that we clearly have information on? What does our data show us? Are we collecting data that's actionable? If we're just collecting data, like NPS, for example, that's not actionable. It's a good metric to have. A lot of companies manage by that, but it's not actionable when it comes to the customer because you have to get down to more of the root level, so you can understand the root causes of what's causing these barriers that you have to resolve. The second thing is what is the emotion that they're experiencing? And what is the voice of the customer saying? And what are all these measurements and all this input we're getting from the customer coming together? What is it telling us? And that's the kind of information we want to try to transform into the map that we're going to revise. Because companies have processes. I mean, you couldn't exist without processes in place. The question is, how do I redesign this process so that it fits the needs of our customer, and it's still good for us? Okay, no question about it. It still has to be workable for us. But what we really want to try to find out is, how do I allow that customer? Remember, they came to us for a reason. They're looking for an outcome. We want to make it as seamless as possible, especially in today's day and age where customers have choices. They have questions. They not only have choices, they are somehow compressed in their time availability, and they don't want to spend a lot of time with us. And we've really achieved that period in life where Michael Porter's projections came true, where he says, this is the age of the services. It's not about the product, and you're seeing servitization, happening all over the place. And you're seeing companies beginning to realize, the product is, sure, we've got to sell the product, but it's going to be all about that service we deliver afterwards. And that's where that map is going to really become a very intuitive and helpful tool for the company to go into the future. And most important, to retain your customer base.
It makes perfect sense. So let me play the flip side of the coin for a second. So let's talk about the people that maybe already feel like they're successful. They just hit the right idea, or they were in the right place, that the market needed something, and they feel like they're so successful. How do you talk to them to understand why journey mapping is still relevant and important for someone like that to be more successful, and to take the procedures and processes out of the heads of the people so that they can live beyond the employees and allow all to benefit by it?
Very good question, Steve. In fact, there are a lot of companies that feel that they really don't have to go through this effort for that very reason, because they're seeing success today. And my position with them is, look, the customer's position is continually evolving, and the world around us is evolving. Well, I mean, take, for example, in the past 3-4 months, what the pandemic has done to the way companies are doing business. And, nobody has all the information today as to what their customers are feeling. So you've got to be out there continually re-examining your customers. The best people to do that and get information from, aside from your customers, are your frontline people. And all too often, we don't take the time to sit down with our frontline people and understand what they're experiencing. We're always looking, what can we do to grow this? What can we do to do the next step? What can we do, beyond that? Rather than taking time to say, hey, what we have in place, is it really still workable? Is it really still delivering that outcome? And we generally find out, we get surprised when we say, hey, all of a sudden our retention numbers don't look so good. We're falling off here. What's happening? And they're always reacting. So I would say to them, well, let's be proactive. Bring some of your key people together. Let's take the process that we're using, map it out, and see what they say is really happening as compared to what you think is happening. And if we're lucky, if life is good, nothing has to be adjusted, or very minor adjustments. Or if life is like it normally is, we'll find there are some real issues taking place that we can take care of on a proactive basis. And that'd be what I'd be telling them to do. And by the way, once you've completed the journey, we talk about this in the consulting industry. So the consultant leaves the room. What are you going to do now? A lot of companies, unfortunately, say, now that we did that, we've corrected it, we're good. No, let's put it in the drawer. It's like an old drawing. It'll become a parchment. That's not what you really want to do. What you really want to do is set up somebody responsible to make sure that all the steps that you've said are going to happen do take place. And secondly, and I generally coordinate with that individual and the owner of the project on a continuous basis until all the projects are completed. And the second thing is, now that once we're done, guess what? Okay, we'll rest for a little bit, and now we got to start over and look at it again, because time doesn't stand still. It's continually evolving. And if you make the mistake of not recognizing that, you're going to find yourself being reactive at some point down the road.
I completely agree. It got me thinking that during this pandemic, I wonder how many of the companies that had done customer journey maps that maybe were essential, how many of them revisited the journey map during the pandemic?
Yeah.
We could Probably
Good-
count them
good-
on one hand.
Right. And think about it, because you've changed, many companies have changed the way their support organizations are working now. Field organizations aren't going into hospitals, for example, in the medical industry. So they're looking at augmented reality. That changes the whole process. The second thing is, look, people who are working at home from remote are the same procedures and journeys that you have in place workable the same way. And so there's a lot to do in that area. I agree.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to think that it's not something that should be looked at as rocket science, but it's something that should be looked at as part of day-to-day operations. Let's revisit where we are, if things, especially when things change. Well, what do we need to do? I mean, I think about all the restaurants that move to curbside experiences, that move to takeout only or delivery. I bet none of them really thought through the whole experience.
Right.
And we've talked about it on previous episodes, and we've beaten that one to death on the restaurant experience. But if you think about it, everything changed on them, even when they were able to now have outdoor seating 10 feet apart in their parking lots that towns and municipalities allowed them to do. Did they think through the new journey map, or were they reactionary to anything that was said? So the city said, okay, you could do this. All right, let's just do this, rather than let's plan it. And let's take an hour, 2 hours, sit around the Zoom call and figure out what we need to do based on the customer's experience. Right. So let's talk about the bleeding head wounds. Let's we'll switch gears from the folks that don't think they need customer journeys, even though they all do. But what about the ones that have a bleeding head wound and they give you a call? Maybe you could take us through what it looks like. What does that process look like when you get that call from somebody? So let's look at the who, what, how that you deal with the decision makers to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's a tried and true method, and here's what makes sense, and let's just take it from there.
Sure. And I there are a lot of different approaches that one can take when they go through this process. I like to keep it simple. So the first thing I'm going to say to somebody is, what are we talking about changing? What are we talking about journey mapping? And then generally we get into conversation about a lot of different processes that aren't working at this point in time. And what I try to do is get the owner, and we have to have a point guard, an owner of the project. I try to get them to understand, look, there's a lot of complexity in all these processes. What we want to do is decide which is the most important process we should begin to work on first from your viewpoint. We don't want to attack too many, because this takes people, we're going to take people out of their normal day-to-day responsibilities, and we're going to call on them to be doing additional work. And the more we expand the project, the less likely we are to complete it, A, in a timely manner, and B, even complete it. So we want to try to keep it as simple as possible to achieve the results that we're looking for. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to decide on what process we're going to attack. And that process itself may be so complex, I had a client where we actually split it in half. We took the front end and then we took the back end, because it was digestible that way. So at that point, then I advise the client what we're going to do is we need to put a team together of the people that are involved in that process, that are impacted by it, and are key to its success, from where the customer begins to get engaged in it as well as to when it ends. So we're going to bring those players together, and I ask that those players be allowed or authorized to be able to make decisions to change the way a department does its work as they participate in that group. Why? Because to have people in a group that say, okay, that's a good idea, we're going to make this change, now I got to go back and get approval for it, yada, 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 it's not going to work. We just expand the time frame beyond comprehension. So we want people that can make decisions, and we're going to get them together now. We call the group together. We usually take anywhere between 2 to 4 days, depending upon the size of the journey that we're looking at. We just absolutely begin at point A, map it out. What are the barriers? What are the emotions? What's happening at this point? And then a number of things happen, which I find amusing. First of all, the beauty of this process is we brought together a number of different departments. We begin to see the silos begin to melt down because people have to communicate with one another. We're now bearing our souls in the same room. And person A turns to person B and says, oh my God, I didn't know you do that. Well, what happens when I pass you this thing? Well, oh, you struggle. Now I understand. Oh my goodness. So the lights go on in the room and we begin, because the barriers are sometimes internal barriers, not necessarily barriers.
Sure.
So we're cleaning up both sides in that respect, and we're making decisions, and we're ending up with a revised process, a revised journey for the customer. And it's going to take, we generally take the assignments, the work that has to be done, and we try to label it into low-hanging fruit, because you want to have some quick victories so everybody can look good and the people can go back to their senior manager and say, well, we're changing this, this, and this in the next 30 days. Oh, that's great. Oh, I see. We're making progress. It's good. So progress is on the board. And then we have mid-level and high-level fruit, which will take a little bit longer. We set up we get the point guard manager to sign in with somebody that can manage the program, a program manager who's going to put all this down in detail, do some program management. We'll get assignments, we'll get time frames, we track it, we make sure all the pieces are in place. And when this consultant leaves the room, you don't get to rest, okay? Because I'm constantly working with you. I set up a series of meetings with who owns the project and the program manager, and we go through, okay, last week we said we were going to do this, this, and this. What happened? Why didn't it happen? And so I'm like an external bear when it comes to that, because at the end of the day, you made a major investment, and I want to make sure you achieve the outcome you're looking for, and that's the way we do. And then we say, okay, now that we've got the process really done, how are we going to operationalize it? Okay, because that's important. Because it may require a culture shift, and those are major. It may require that we're going to have people begin to ask the question, well, how's that going to affect my job? How's that going to affect me? Yes.
Yeah, Dennis, so let me just take a quick break. I want to come back to the operationalization of these things, because I think that's an area that we want to dig into. So let me just take a quick break, and we will be right back. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Panviva has 25 years of empowering customer service, and we have deep expertise in how people actually use information, from our roots in learning and performance. We offer accurate, consistent information on demand to every channel. Most relevant knowledge at your people's exact moment of need. Integrated, streamlined internal processes. Systems that deliver memorable and remarkable customer experiences that boost customer retention and loyalty every time. Knowledge that extends across your entire digital landscape. To learn more, visit Panviva at www.panviva.com.
And we're back. We're back with Dennis Gershowitz, and we've been talking about journey mapping. And one of the things that we started talking about before the break was how to operationalize all of the great things that are happening. So it doesn't matter what industry it is. You can pick insurance, you can pick a department, a contact center. I guess how you operationalize all of these things is really the key. Doing all the work, doing all the analysis, building the map is wonderful, but it's the one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is how do you put it in practice? So Dennis, why don't you take that away?
Okay, great. So as I was beginning to say, is what we really want to do is now move it from the drawing board into reality and make it work. And obviously what we have to do is set up a training program so that we can get this in and people understand it. Well, you need to remember, John Cotter pointed out a long time ago that people resist change, A, because it may be for self-interest purposes, B, because they may not understand, C, because they have a very low tolerance for change. The truth is people don't really like change at all. They like to come in oftentimes and work and know that things are going to be the way yesterday. Or else the fourth reason was they didn't assess the situation or the need to make the change the way it really is. Excuse me. So So what we have to do here is we have to put together an explanation why we're changing the process and get that message out to the people. And usually, depending on kind of environment we have, if we have remote people, it's done best through video. It's done best through voice. We get the message out that way. And then I like to find go-to people that the rest of the organization relies on, get them in first and get them on board. And a lot of these go-to people were part of the original team. I should have said that in the beginning. I like to have some of those go-to people in on the original planning team because they can take the message about, hey, this is why we're doing this, and this is why it's important. And so then we get it out. We put together a training plan. I usually like to get the education department involved if the company has one because they're skilled in the trainers and they're skilled in the culture of the company and how to get internal training done. And then it goes back to the old adage, tell them again, tell them again, tell them again. And that's what we do. We get the message out there. This is how it is. We get the sub procedures done that have to be done specifically. If there's a change in jobs, a change in departments, it's explained why. And it's gone through and clearly, without any question, and we should understand this, the key leadership of the organization has bought in, and they're basically saying the same thing and doing the same thing to support this. It goes understood in my mind, and I should have said this also earlier, that there must be complete leadership buy-in for the change that you're going through, because it is a cultural shift in the company when you're doing this.
How important is video in this and making sure that the processes and the procedures are known to all the employees affected?
I think nowadays, and as we go forward in the new environments, 100% important. I can't stress the importance of this, of having videos put together that walk people through it as if you're doing a remote training class. I see the real value to that. I don't think there's any other way. You're just not going to bring people together anymore, And the way we did in the past, I think that's a new now. And I think the tools that are going to allow us to support that kind of training are going to be just so much better in that respect. And the other thing is, I think, depending upon the complexity of this, there are going to be some people who are going to be some real experts in this area. It might benefit the company to have set up a portal where employees can call in with questions and get or chat in with questions and get quick answers when they're out there trying to execute. That's another tool that we can use in that respect.
Sure. That sounds great. So in the minute or so we've got left, what kind of tips and tricks can you give listeners that run the gambit from CEOs to CXOs and CSOs, right down to solopreneurs? What kind of things can we say for them to at least start thinking about, or maybe some small steps that they can make to give them some ideas?
Okay, so the first step is to think about, with all the changes going on now, are you really in tune with what changes have happened with your customer? And have you really laid that out to say that the processes you use in the company today can really meet those needs now, and let's say within the next 12 to 18 months? The second thing is, keep it simple. Absolutely. If you only got one primary process completed in the next 12 months, but you knew it was like gold and it helped the customer achieve their outcomes and it was easy and seamless for them to do, then you've accomplished something in that respect. Absolutely insist on keeping it simple. And number three, I think the most important thing that's happening today is to make sure that the metrics you're using and the process you're using to listen to the voice of the customer are really in tune with the customer and measuring what's happening out there with the customer today, because the customer's needs are continuing to evolve. They don't even know what tomorrow's going to bring in many cases. And with all of that's happening around us and with the changes, with respect to legislation impacting it, you go back to like the restaurant, your discussion about the restaurant. Maybe tomorrow they won't be able to do out in the parking lot. It'll change again. And so you've got to be prepared, be flexible, but more importantly, you've got to have a team that can jump in and react to that and say, okay, based upon what's happening today, this is what we've got to do. And you look at that. And so when we talk about agile, I think it's exponentially agile is what we have to be prepared to do. So we got to get out of our mind, hey, this is the way we do it, or this is the way we did do it. We've got to always be looking at what's a better way to do it.
Perfect. That's a perfect note to end on. Dennis, this has been great. We've kind of run all the way around the world on the customer journey mapping, and even had some great hints and things for people to take away and think about. And I think what I'm also hearing is the processes and the procedures and being in tune with your customer is paramount for you to be thinking about on a daily basis. Are you meeting their expectations, and are you exceeding their expectations? And is the process and the journey you take them on able to support all of that? So, Dennis, thank you very much for your time today. This has been a very interesting chat with you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And everyone, thank you again for joining us on another episode of The Science of CX. I'm Steve Pappas, your host. And until the next time, take care. You've been listening to The Science of CX. My name is Steve Pappas. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have, the highest compliment that you can give us is to subscribe, rate, and review The Science of CX. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.